Major League Journeymen, let's jump in. We got a good one today. We got to chat about some MLS coaches that have maybe raised their stock and a couple that are floundering in a weird and wild space in the first third of this league season. We also got some pretty significant results. We got some marquee matchups that we saw. And we also have, I think, on deck, a really exciting semifinal for the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Let's jump in. Major League Journeyman Daniel Gargan here, leading the way with my number one, Dax McCarty. We are, thankfully, a little lighter today. We don't have the albatross that is Alan Gordon on us. So, Dax, I actually may be able to ask you questions without Gordo just whining and complaining about you taking all his answers. So I wanted to throw this to you first because I have been a little bit intrigued about Kevin Egan's influence in the in the studio with Apple, and I noticed that you guys started the MLS On Air accounts, which I thought is a great idea. And I have two questions. First is, whose idea was that and who's responsible for it to kind of manage? Is it its own thing or where did that come from?
Well, it's definitely none of the quote unquote talent. That's for sure. Okay. I will say, I believe Kaylin Kyle in all her glory has been advocating for that for a very long time. She's been the pseudo influencer for the guys the last couple of years. And so I thought it was a great idea for them to actually, get us our own account where we can have some fun and we can start posting, a bunch of clips of the expert analysis that you get every weekend.
Oh man, the follow-up is the expert analysis that I would like to ask you about. But before I do that, I do think that it's a great addition, and it's something that I think has been a long time coming because you guys do have a lot of content that you put out. It is difficult, I would say, to digest it in the time frames that it's available, right? So getting some of these bite-sized pieces where we can hear from you and hear from Brad and hear from Sash and all the other guys, I think is really valuable. It's a big piece. It is a game changer, and it's an added value, which I like. Totally. So for you guys to be on that, I would only suggest that maybe throw some content from some of the announcers that call all those games, because they don't get a ton of love, and they deserve it. And they do a great job. I saw you brought in Mo for one of the conversations. I think just sprinkling them in and getting their face out there because they put a ton of time and effort and work into calling an actual game and having the amount of knowledge that's necessary to do it well. And the league, to be fair, doesn't do a great job of highlighting who those voices are. So I think that anytime that you can kind of bring them into it, it would be awesome.
Yeah, Mo was on, I believe, the weekly show. This is MLS, which also they do a really good job of trying to rotate through some of the on-air talent. We have Kaylin Carr on there. Yep. Twellman hops on every now and then. Schedule allowing.
Schedule permitting.
Yeah, schedule permitting for him, of course. But yeah, those are some really
between the front nine and the back
really good conversations, and we can go a little bit deeper on some stuff. It's similar to MLS Wrap Up, which is a great show that I think Kevin does a great job throwing it around and the pertinent discussions of stuff that happens over the weekend. And sometimes, Wrap Up is tough because it's on late, but you can go back and watch it. But yeah, some of these bite-sized clips that you can get in the minute to minute and a half long clips where we can try to analyze stuff going wrong in the league, cough LA Galaxy, Atlanta United, or stuff going really well in the league, the top of the East, the Vancouver Whitecaps. I mean, there's so much to digest, especially with 30 teams in MLS now. Yeah. It's a lot to cover. And it is. If you're a fan of the league, that's one thing. MLS 360 is perfect for you. But if you're a fan of just one team and you don't really care about what's happening, around the rest of the league, it can feel maybe a little bit lonely that we aren't covering certain teams as much as other teams. And, that's kind of the nature of the beast, right? There's always going to be teams that are more relevant, teams that are playing better at a certain time, storylines around certain teams that you can get to, and then others that you really can't, So What I would say is that the MLS On Air account that you bring up is a perfect way for people to get, I think, the little bite-sized stuff that you can't maybe see during the weekend.
You guys can get creative with it too. I thought one of the topics that I wanted to ask you about specifically was, I believe the question was, which striker would you take if you're building a franchise? And you said Jovic, right?
Yep, I did.
What in God's name are you thinking? And please expand on that, because we have a larger platform here, and I would actually just like. No, I didn't. I didn't. You know what I took? I took the hot take, and so this was the hot take. So now I want to hear a little bit more of the thought process.
So they gave us, I forgot what the parameters were, but it was maybe just, you're starting a franchise from scratch. Here, some of the numbers that play into it. And the way that I took it and the path I wanted to take it down was production level, age, and eye test. And so when I factored in all three of those things, I looked at Brian White because I'm a huge fan.
Yep.
But Brian White is, he's firmly in his prime, 28, believe turns 29 this year.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking strictly about building a franchise around. So if I'm going to give a guy a 5-6 year deal to be my cornerstone piece, there were certain guys who I think maybe are a little bit more polished right now than Jovic, but they're a little bit older. Or I'm not obviously going to take a Messi or a Suarez, who are probably, no question, better players at this point in time. But if I'm building a franchise from scratch, I looked at Jovic and I said, he scored goals for the Galaxy in an excellent team and was a championship caliber striker. And now he's on a bad team and he is still doing the business. He's still up there in the Golden Boot race. I think he has 5 or 6 goals already this year on a bad team. And just his overall performance, I'm just starting to see him add more facets to his game than I didn't see before. In this most recent game they played against the Portland Timbers, his 1v1 ability, it's not just his movement. It's his 1v1 ability, his feet. He has really quick, sharp feet that I didn't really give him enough credit for, I think, when he was in LA.
You mean against Santa? Who did
against
play?
Portland? They lost to Portland 2 weeks ago.
Got you. Okay.
So
yep.
He created this chance that it was like one of those epiphany moments where it was like, Jovic, I really was not familiar with your game, honestly.
Okay.
It was one of those moments where I said, okay, he's got more to his game than I'm giving him credit for.
Yeah. Or maybe that he was responsible for in LA and then also was probably able to share in Kansas City.
I've just seen him blossom more this year. And look, he's on a bad team, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, he's going to like drag them up from the bottom of the table. I don't think he has that type of power and influence. But if I'm starting a franchise and I'm looking for a player that's at a good age, he's only 25. And I can give him. He was for me a really good choice. He's pretty much always fit. There were other players. Obviously, this is why it's a fun discussion. But I'm curious, what direction are you taking that?
No, I just saw some of the other names that were on there, and I thought it was really interesting that.
Like who? Okay, so tell me who you're.
I think wasn't Cucho on the list?
No. Well, we're talking about in the league right now, of course.
I know that, which is also where I thought it was interesting. There was a graphic.
Cucho was on the list. The graphic was like who scored the most goals in MLS over the last 18 months or something like that. It was like Cucho, Brian White, Alonso Martinez, who's excellent, who mowed this mistake. He's fantastic.
Yeah, I like him too. Yeah. He's good. I mean, he's the easy choice. No, I didn't hate it. I just wanted to hear. I didn't get a ton of the context behind your decision, and I wanted to hear.
Hopefully now you have it. Yeah.
It's a little bit more significant.
So who are you going with off the top of your head? Go ahead. You throw out something that you like.
And this is just who I'm taking to start my franchise. Is that what the question was?
You're building a franchise from scratch. What striker in the league are you going right now? And you're saying, I'm going to build my team around you. So I looked at age. Age was a big factor for me. Okay. Longevity. So I didn't want someone like a Benteke, who's probably a better striker than Jovic right now, but he's at the tail end of his career. Clearly, Benteke is a great player.
Yeah, no, you're not taking Benteke. He's too long in the tooth. Does it have anything to do with compensation or value? Or...
I think when you're getting into designated player territory, who cares? Pay him $50 million for all I care. DP doesn't count against the cap. It's just whoever you like to start your franchise around.
It's a good question.
Cincinnati's Denke is excellent. Latte Lot looks really dangerous. But again, I'm going based off of what I've seen this year. Latte Lot has kind of tailed off a little bit. Denke looks like a really complete striker, but he's not scoring as many goals as I want. Baribo looks a little bit too one-dimensional for me, relying on crossing.
Baribo, interestingly enough, though, looks kind of similar to Joveljic in LA, right? Like he was the end result of a Pec Painsil, not really responsible for a ton. I think
I'm seeing a lot more out of Joveljic in Kansas City than I did when he was in LA.
I like Latte Lot. I think that's a good shout. I'm interested to see. I thought that the
can't criticize my choice without giving me a better
No,
one.
it's good, and I didn't think of an answer, so I think that that's probably fair. I watched Gazdag now twice in kind of lining up in Columbus, which I liked him in Philly, but I didn't think he was like phenomenal. I don't know if he's my choice. I don't think he would be my choice of franchise starter, but he's
also not a striker. He's more like 9.5.
He's like 9.5. I like
Jesus Ferreira.
Dude, I like where Columbus is using him though. I feel like he's kind of unlocked some things, and I think
he'll thrive in Columbus.
I have a feeling he's going to thrive, especially with Diego Rossi right next to him. I don't know. It is a good question. Maybe it's tougher.
How about you let it marinate, and at the end of the show, we'll take your answer.
Yeah. Okay. Let me sit on that one for a little bit. You did mention, I think, a couple clubs, or at least one that I wanted to touch on because I don't know. Let me read you something. Ready? Listen to this list. Vancouver, Austin, Minnesota, Portland, Colorado. Okay. I want you to tell me if that is the top of the Western Conference rankings for 2025, or I want you to tell me if it's the bottom of the Western Conference rankings for literally any other year.
I knew where you were heading with this, and it's a really good question because if you looked at my preseason predictions, every one of those teams would have been at the bottom.
It's crazy. I don't know if anybody had that on their bingo card.
How hard it is to predict, honestly. Vancouver is the story of the season so far.
They're in the semifinals, right? Conference semifinals, Champions Cup.
CONCACAF Champions Cup semifinals, top of the league. Supporter Shield standing.
Top of the league.
Not just
top of the league. So here, I want you to counter this because I did get a chance to watch them probably half of their game, maybe 60 minutes against St. Louis. And to be fair, I walked away and I was like, nah, I don't know about these guys. I like Brian White, but also missed a couple chances in that game that, like an out-and-out striker, like one that maybe you're talking about in terms of investing in long-term. Not that he doesn't finish, but there were a couple chances in there where I was like, man, a pure, like, next-level guy is going to put that in the back of the net. And he didn't do that. I didn't walk away from seeing them in that game, which maybe it's an outlier, but really feeling great about their longevity. Do you disagree with that?
I do, because I've been questioning them all year.
Yeah.
Seriously. I've been like, okay, Vancouver's going to fall off.
Right. It's next week. It's next week. It's next week.
They're done. Oh, they got to rotate. They're done. Oh, they're going on the road. They're done. Dude, they just keep winning, and they keep doing it in convincing fashion, and they keep doing it with injuries. That's the thing for me where I'm like, Jesper Sorensen, man, I was not familiar with your game as a coach. He's essentially taken Vanni Sartini's roster and made it exponentially better.
Yep.
So,
and that's fair. That is fair.
I can't, like, this team, and they're doing, like, Jaden Nelson has been in and out of the team. He looks phenomenal. Ryan Gauld has been injured. They're doing this without him. Their backline, they have the best backline, and they have the best expected goals against, if you like data, in the league, meaning they don't really concede a lot of chances. They don't concede a lot of shots. They have the best number 6 in the league in Andres Kubas for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I like Brian White is, regardless of if he's missed a couple chances, he's one of the most reliable strikers in the league.
Now.
Here's the thing, Gargs, is like I can't sit here and tell you that I think they do anything at a super elite level, even though defensively they are very good. But they do multiple things at a really high level, and they do it consistently. Mm-hmm. So I look at, they've been on the road multiple times in CONCACAF Champions Cup down to teams in like powerhouses in Mexico, and they've just won. That doesn't really happen for MLS teams. And they balance that with being on top of the Supporter Shield race. I can't doubt them anymore. I won't continue to wait for them to fall off because the eye test, how good they look, it matches the underlying numbers and it says it is sustainable. So who am I as a meager first year analyst to doubt them anymore? I won't doubt them anymore. I won't.
You're not going to doubt them anymore. It's like, okay, so then take it one step further, because the other game that I did catch was Columbus, Miami, the battle of the unbeatens. Are you putting them? Are you taking them? They got Miami on Thursday night, right, at BC Place. I think we're probably going to learn a lot. But heading into that game, are you taking Vancouver? Are you taking Vancouver over either of those teams?
So take my 3-minute spiel about the Vancouver Whitecaps
and throw it right out the window.
And throw it out the window because I'm still going to take Miami. Okay, but I think that they are going to give Miami one of the biggest tests Miami's had all season. And Miami hasn't even looked that great the last couple of weeks. Miami does things and they annoy me. Bradley Wright Phillips, me and him talk about this a few times in the last couple of weeks on Wrap Up. Teams are letting Miami off the hook. Let's go through the last couple of weeks with Inter Miami. Toronto FC, worst team in the league, and yet they go down to Miami and probably should win that game.
Yeah, fair.
They tie. LAFC in CONCACAF Champions Cup goes up 1-0, should go up 2-0 in the first half with the chances that they have. They don't take their chances, and then Messi does what Messi does, and they come back, and Miami knocks out LAFC in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And then against Chicago in front of 65,000 people, Chicago should win the game. They were the better team. They had the better chances, and for them, it wasn't necessarily finishing. It was more of like a final pass and like decision making that they struggled with. And then this last week against Columbus, this game, it's such an outlier because Columbus completely dominates. Miami gets one chance and they score. Columbus has 5. You would call them...
Dude, I thought Columbus was dominant.
They dominated. Columbus dominated, and for some reason, teams just forget how to score against Inter Miami. I don't know what it is. Inter Miami has this magic sauce that they're cooking right now that they can beat you with talent, of course. Messi's still the best player in the league, and he's still highly motivated. Yeah. But they can also beat you with like grit and like defensive. They're grinding defensively.
Well, I mean, the goal they scored against Columbus was good defensive play, a quick outlet. You're traveling on, and Kramaski makes what, like a 50-yard run?
But even the service from Weigand, it's a great goal.
Absolutely.
But Miami right now, they've only conceded 6 goals in MLS play. That's tied for the best, and that's tied for the best defensive record in the league.
That's pretty wild. And having 2 geriatric walkers on the field for the majority of it, that's a lot.
Yeah. That's my point, is that Javier Mascherano deserves a lot of credit for stabilizing this team defensively. But again, Gargs, you ask about sustainability with Vancouver, I see it. With Miami, I don't see them playing the same way and continue in it being sustainable. Someone is eventually going to punish them for all these chances they concede. But it's not going to be in CONCACAF Champions Cup.
But it's not going to be on Thursday because it's actually worth something.
I just think Miami, man, I think they can take it to another level. I don't know.
I think they definitely can.
I hope Vancouver proves me wrong because they're the best story in MLS right now. I can't take myself to pick them.
Yeah, I think we can both agree that it is extremely difficult to travel across the country and play and get a meaningful result, right? So for Miami to go to BC Place for a Thursday night game on short rest, that's really difficult.
The best they can hope for in that game for Inter Miami, I think, is a draw, which the way they're defending, I think they can probably get.
Yeah, I mean, gosh. You could also, I mean, they certainly play in transition, but they're deadly in transition as well, which almost sets it up for them, especially at BC Place, which is that big open cavern. It does feel very much like that. The CONCACAF Champions Cup. Are we feeling good about this thing? Is it still a priority? Does the league 100%. Still like it? I feel like it hasn't had the same amount of luster to it. And I also think that the last 4 teams that are in it are pretty exciting. I mean, the way that it's shaping up, Mexico on Mexico, MLS on MLS, to go to the Cup final, I think is is awesome, number one, but number two, it's all good competition. But it doesn't seem like it's been celebrated maybe as much as it has been in the past.
I don't get that feeling. I don't get that feeling just from covering the league and from being there. The LAFC Inter Miami's second leg down in Miami was one of the games of the season.
Agreed.
It had everything. It had drama. It had Messi going absolutely nuts and being fantastic, like legitimately looking like it. After they called back a Messi goal for either offside or a foul in the buildup, and Messi was pissed, and he went like berserk and just took the game over. It was like a quintessential Messi performance where he just dominated and he was doing everything and scoring great goals and just looked so motivated. But the LAFC, it was crazy. Chances, fights, yellow cards, should have been red cards. I mean, it had everything. So I'm not sure why you feel that way. Maybe you're a little bit more disconnected from it than me, but I've been so locked in, especially with what Vancouver was doing. Vancouver in the second leg down in Mexico, Tristan Blackman scoring a last-minute goal.
Yeah.
For them to advance.
No, that was a big one too. Which also adds to Vancouver's story. I don't know. Correct. It just feels like it's not as big of a deal when here we are with Tigres and Cruz Azul and arguably the two best teams in MLS right now, and they're all kind of lined up.
I think it's four really good teams, and I think it could go either way. But I'm calling it now. Whoever advances between Vancouver and Miami wins the CCC. There's something about either of these teams. You have either Messi in the final, or you have a Vancouver team who looks fantastic against traditionally very strong Mexican clubs. But I just have a feeling it's our year. It's just a gut feeling I have for MLS teams, and so you can stay skeptical of it, but I'm locked in, man. I think
I like it. I'm not skeptical of it. It just doesn't feel as celebrated.
I hear you. I hear where you're coming from, and I don't see that at all. I think it's been really good this year.
I don't know if I'm betting on Vancouver though, if I'm being honest. I don't know if I'm betting. I don't think I can bet against Messi, and then I also don't think, like, let's say Vancouver does advance. That's a lot of.
You're not taking a movie like a Cruz Azul who looks.
I don't know, man. That's a lot to ask in a cup championship without a ton of experience for that group. So that's why you lace them up, buddy. That's why you play the game, as they say, isn't it?
Lace them up.
But I was going with those rankings. You mentioned a couple teams that have stood out to you. You also, I think, dogged a number of them, as did I, as did Gordo. And I think two of the guys that we had, I think, pretty significant questions about weeks ago, have had a pretty significant rebound. One of those teams in the top four, Portland and Phil Neville. You've gotten to watch a little bit more of them than I have. Is there anything that sticks out from a tweak from him? Does he deserve some of this credit? Do the players deserve some of this credit? What's going on up there?
I think it's not necessarily any major tactical tweaks that Phil Neville has made. I think it's more personnel related. He's given Finn Sermon, young center back, I think, basically handed the keys over to him for this back line and said, "Hey, you've been fantastic. I'm putting you in the back line." And Finn Sermon's been really good. He's stabilized that back line. They still concede a lot of chances and a lot of goals, but he's been really good. Max Crepeau came out of the team a few weeks ago, and Pantemis, the backup goalkeeper, stepped in and has been really good. He's saved, I think, 3 penalties already this year. And Phil Neville had a big decision to make when Crepeau was available again, and he stuck with Pantemis. So now Neville made that decision, which I think has been beneficial to them. And then I think they've just gotten guys healthy at the right time. Their attack is really dynamic. That's the one thing that I think stands out to me about Portland is you get Jonathan Rodriguez back from injury. He's coming back into a team that has Anthony, David DaCosta, who's starting to get to know the league better and play very well. Felipe Mora has gotten fit and healthy. And then you have Kevin Kelsey, who looks a little bit better than he did in the beginning of the season. And you have Santi Moreno, who was kind of banged up early in the year, who's come back and looked really good. So I think it's their diversity in their attack. They can hit you from like a lot of different angles. Yeah. You know what I mean? They've got like 5 or 6 attacking options that make them really dangerous at all times. And if they can just keep things short up on the back line, they're going to be really dangerous, man. And by the way, usually when we talk about their midfield, it's Diego Chara, who we all talk about, but David Ayala, this young midfielder they have, has been really good. He's an excellent young midfielder who deserves a lot of credit. So I think it's just a matter of Phil Neville starting to figure out his personnel a little bit and getting some players back healthy. We were critical of them early in the season. They got dominated by Vancouver, but they slowly have started to creep up the table, and I think they're 6 games unbeaten now. So, look, you got to give credit where credit's due.
I was going to point to that. I think adjustments after you lose a piece like Evander and maybe a little bit of a less reliance on a guy like Diego Chara, who's been their rock for forever. That's tough. Those are two major pieces that take some time to get through. Neville navigating the channels up there. So I think that's all. It's good to see. We did touch a little bit on Caleb Porter. I mean, literally weeks ago, we thought that he might be on his way out. Has he done enough? Because I think that's a little bit of a different story. He did make some tactical tweaks and kind of changed his formation, which for him to be as successful as he has been with his style of play, the way that he wants to do things, and to finally make an adjustment and then ultimately have it pay off. Has he created enough separation, do you think?
He was one that we were really critical of early in the year. And rightfully so. His team hadn't scored a goal.
It's crazy.
They didn't score a goal for like 5 weeks. The only goal they scored was an own goal. Then finally, Carlos Hill starts to heat up. And I think Caleb Porter came to the realization, you touched on it a little bit, his wingers were just really underwhelming. You had Gonago, who was playing as a winger, who wasn't playing well. You had Chankalai, who's injured, coming back from injury. Luca Langoni looks like a really talented player, but no production. So against Atlanta 2 weeks ago, Caleb just said, all right, we're going with 3 center backs and we're going to try to get another striker on the field. And it's worked out. Carlos Hill has been fantastic. He looks like he's playing back to an MVP type level. Campana and Gonago, he put them up top in this last game against NYCFC, and they looked really good. Campana scored. I believe Gonago got the second one, but they just looked better. They just look more stable. And I think Caleb Porter, that was maybe a little bit of, let me swallow my pride and just make some tactical adjustments here and stop forcing my players into square pegs into round holes and let me just make sense. Yep. So look, credit to Caleb Porter and New England. I don't think they're out of the woods yet. I still think that they have some proving to do in terms of being able to beat some of the better teams in the league playing in this formation. We'll see if that's sustainable, but yeah, Caleb Porter has absolutely bought some more time because they were dreadful early in the year.
The name you mentioned was Campana, because I think at the beginning of the year, I expected big things out of him. I expected him to take on a massive role. Seeing him in person was a difference maker for me, because I didn't realize just how big he is, how big of a presence, and then how... Dude, also how soft his feet are. He's got a great touch for a big fella, and I was expecting a lot more out of him. So maybe they've hit a form where he'll get the service that he needs and opens up the field for him and looks a little bit different. But they are, I think, I still can't believe the Western Conference standings.
I know.
It is pretty wild.
Here's a fun one for you. Austin FC, who in preseason I had them in the top 4. Not for reasons why they are actually in the top 4. I thought their attack would be significantly better, but their attack isn't very good.
Another guy, Brandon Vazquez. What's he got? 1 or 2? He's got
two goals, but he's been very underwhelming. Very underwhelming for the amount of money that he costs. So
also, I would have bet on him too.
Yeah.
Go to Mexico, come back into a comfortable environment and just fly.
Second in the West, -1 goal differential.
Oof.
How do you explain that?
That's a stat that doesn't translate.
The only way you can explain that is the Western Conference is wide open. Wide open. Honestly, after Vancouver, it is anyone's conference. I mean, you have LAFC and Seattle, who everyone had pegged at the top of the conference, starting the season horribly. Both of them kind of hanging on for dear life in the playoff race right now. Seattle's starting to play better. There's just, honestly, Gargs, I could see any team in the West falling off or making a leap. Vancouver's the only team where I'm like, yeah, they're excellent. Every other team, I'm like, I don't really know.
So out of those 5, How many of those do you think end up in the playoffs?
Oh man. Vancouver, absolutely yes. Austin, yes, even though I don't know.
Dude, the stats are saying otherwise
I
with that
know.
one.
Minnesota, yes. Minnesota's very good. They're an elite defensive team, and they've got two really good strikers. Uh, Portland, I think all five of those teams end up in the playoffs because Colorado too. I wasn't very high on Colorado. I thought the way they ended last year, they were really
Hmm.
disappointing. Um, but the way that look, when you have, I think Chris Armas is really starting to come into his own as a coach. I think it took him a little while to find out, what he was about as a coach. But I think he's
Sure.
making really good tactical adjustments. The way that they beat San Diego recently was really impressive. You have Navajo, you have a great striker, and you have Georgi Mihailovic playing at a really high level, like an MLS All-Star level. If you have that, you're going to be solid. And so I actually think all five of those teams make the playoffs along with LAFC and Seattle. So then it leaves two other spots for whoever to sneak in there. Galaxy? I don't know. I know we wanted to hit on your Galaxy.
Man, I don't know what to say about them, man. I don't know where to go with that because
I want you to go somewhere with it, and
okay.
then I can piggyback off you because obviously I have some thoughts.
So here's the question that I have. The further that this goes on, I think that anytime that there's instability in an organization and question marks, it really causes problems. Now, number one, you have major instability because Puig is out, right? So that's the easy one. He is clearly their talisman. He's clearly the sole identity of the Galaxy, which is also crazy to say because of Peck and Paintsill. So they've both been out.
Yeah.
Now they're back on the field. They still didn't win. Within all that, there's the biggest cloud over the biggest face of the organization over the past 6 years, which is Greg Vanney, and still not being signed, still not signing a contract as the head coach. Having, I think that we talked about this, a pretty significantly difficult run to open up his tenure within the Galaxy and moving to the Galaxy, having to adjust his role, kind of refocusing in on being the head coach, getting some pieces in that clearly helped his case, and then ultimately deliver another star for the Galaxy, which I think we've chopped that up pretty ad nauseum here. I think and recognize that is the most valuable thing in this league is a star above your crest for MLS Cup.
Yep.
He delivers that. Doesn't get extended. He's on a contract year. He's on a contract year heading into the playoffs. You ultimately win MLS Cup without your best player, right? So delivers and then doesn't get a new deal. And now he's gone, the longest winless streak for an MLS Cup winner club,
Yep.
right? Setting, I think, a record for the wrong things right now, which you can explain that away in terms of the way that you're missing a number of players, you got issues, you're shipping players out. It's a rebuilding year. Whatever.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. You could explain that away five weeks into the season. Not anymore. I'm not letting Greg.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
I'm not letting them off the hook anymore.
Neither am I, and that's where I'm saying as it goes on, you're still the face of the organization. Your thoughts and your ideologies still dictate the way that they play. You still now have players that are coming back into this. They move a couple pieces, which I get. You move Joveljic, you move Neal, you move some. They're not fringe players, but they're also not the Pecks and the Paintsills and the Puiges, which are out. But now you're getting them back, and you're still not getting results against, like we just said, Austin, who is not a great side.
Austin just got pasted 2 weeks ago, 5-1.
Right.
I get the Galaxy should be beating that Austin team.
Dude, they're not. Listen, the Galaxy are not an elite team right now. That's clear, right? So here's a question that I wanted to throw to you. I'll say this. I think it's probably at this point a contentious negotiation between the LA Galaxy and Greg Vanney. I think at this point it has to be. There's no way that they're clearly seeing eye to eye, which then is ultimately why a deal doesn't get done, which then ultimately is someone is feeling devalued in this situation.
Yep.
At this point, with the Galaxy continuing to lose games, right? They are continuing to lose. They haven't shown any glimpses of really being any better. Who has the upper hand in getting a deal done, and does it get done?
I think that the Galaxy have the upper hand in terms of contract negotiations, and Greg re-signing or not, because look where they are right now. Greg is coming off an MLS Cup, but right now, the way the season is going, I think if you're in a stalemate, the club will have the upper hand in terms of negotiations right now. But I want to back up. I don't know. I don't know if they get a deal done, honestly. I still think that the Galaxy, and call me crazy, this is a wild thing to say with the state of this team right now. I still think they make the playoffs. In a Western Conference that is wide open and teams are taking points off teams left and right, I still see this team being talented enough and Greg being a good enough coach for them to make the playoffs. But with that being said, Greg has to change something. I rate Greg Vanney as one of the best coaches in the league. Still, I think he is. I think he's proven that. He's won MLS Cup with 2 different teams. And I go back to MLS Cup, I don't know if it was 2016 or 2017, where his Toronto FC team beat Seattle Sounders, and convincingly in MLS. Mm-hmm. I forgot if it was 16 or 17. Maybe you can help me. But Greg, he had played a certain way all
TFC
year.
Was 17.
Yeah, 17. He had played a certain way all year, and then I remember vividly, I saw his lineup come out in MLS Cup final, and he was playing in a 4-4-2 diamond. Mm-hmm. And everyone was like shocked, like, oh my God, well, what does Greg see that others don't? And they ended up dominating. It was a stroke of genius. Yep. And I say this because tactically, Greg is one of the best soccer minds that we have in MLS. I think the way that he sees the game and the way that he analyzes opponents and the way that he wants to play, he's one of the brightest tactical minds in MLS.
Now, why has he not adjusted for the first 10 games of the season?
That's where I'm at, is I don't understand why it has taken him so long to make an adjustment, whether that's tactically or whether that's in the formation. I'm not sure what he's waiting for. I think maybe it's a little bit of stubbornness, maybe a little bit of arrogance, but at this point in the season, something has to change, because he's smart enough to know that this team, it can't play the same way it did last year without Ricky Puig. He covered so many cracks for this team, but I'm just shocked that it's taken him so long to make some sort of change formationally. I can't give them any excuses anymore. I think the injuries were a fair excuse early in the season and the losses that they've had, but you can't give that to them anymore. And this
so Dax, we're 9 games into the season.
Yeah, you can't give them any excuses anymore.
The playoff line is 12 points right now, and that 8th spot is Seattle, who just smacked Nashville.
Well, that looks like 9 teams make it.
9 teams. So to get into the 8th or 9th spot. So Seattle is in 8th on 12. Dallas is in 9th on 12.
Yeah.
So you have those 2 teams sitting there. San Jose, I'd certainly rate them higher than the Galaxy right now, and they're on 10. Yeah. And then you have LAFC, San Diego, Colorado, Portland, Minnesota, Austin, Vancouver, all the teams that we mentioned that are realistically well ahead of the Galaxy, who sit on 3 points.
Yeah, I know.
It's a tough hill, man. It's a tough hill, and I don't know which side I would like to see this fall out on. I would like to see Greg come to terms with the Galaxy, but my guess is he has a value for himself that he feels like, hey, all the things that you said, that I've done this in this league, I've done this now for this club, I've weathered the storm, because to be fair, he did weather a pretty significant storm. Departure of Chris Klein, being the GM, now moving in to the head coaching role specifically. There is some merit to that, but this is still professional sports, man, and it's you either do it or you don't.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where that plays out. I hope that Greg remains the coach of the Galaxy for a very long time, because I know he loves the club, and it's just a matter of getting something done. But with regard to how they get out of this funk, Greg has to change something tactically, and I don't know what that is, but he's just not. It's just so many self-inflicted wounds that this team. It's the sign of a bad team when you consistently beat yourself. And this Galaxy team is just consistently beating themselves with goalkeeper mistakes, dumb red cards, mistakes at the back, and quite honestly, poor attacking play. Painsil, it's taken him a while to get up to speed after his injury, and he's not at full form. Peck hasn't hit the same heights as last year. Christian Ramirez has been fine, but he's not doing the same job Jovic did. Then that midfield isn't the same. That midfield without Brugman and Delgado, it just doesn't look the same. Cerrillo is still a very good player, but this team has a lot of holes in it, and I think it's on Greg to figure it out.
I think Puig was the one that covered up a lot of those holes last year, and you can't rely on him. He's not there, and he's not coming back anytime soon. So it's dangerous, man. I don't know what that's going to look like. You mentioned Greg being one of the best tactical minds in our league, and I think that we got to stay in LA because we need the other news that comes out of LAFC is that Cherundolo is out at the end of the season to move back to Germany specifically, right? I thought that was pretty wild.
Yeah.
Because not that, Cherundolo obviously has great connections to Germany and cut his teeth there as a player and as a coach, but he's also from LA and he had moved back and, gotten in that mix. I thought to be there for the long term. He's clearly been one of the most decorated coaches in this league. I don't think that I couldn't imagine that there's an impasse there in terms of wanting to continue on with him as the head coach, but maybe I'm wrong. What do you know about that situation?
Yeah, I don't know much, to be honest, just what everyone else has seen. And I think we spoke about it a little bit over the weekend. What is Steve Cherundolo's legacy with LAFC? And, I have my thoughts. I'm curious what yours are. Go ahead. I tend to think that Steve Cherundolo, I think he gets taken for granted a little bit by that fan base. And
absolutely.
He's won 3 trophies, or he's been in 3. I think he's been in 6 or 7 finals.
No, he's won 3 trophies. You're right. He won Supporter Shield and Cup, and then he also won Open Cup,
U.S. Open Cup, and he's won 3 trophies, and he's been in 6 or 7 different finals.
Dude.
And he's constantly coached a team towards the top of the Western Conference.
Yep.
Now, here's where. So what I'll say to the LAFC fans is that I saw a lot of people who were like thrilled that he was leaving or that were calling for him to be fired and all this. And I say, well, the grass isn't always greener, and you guys are spoiled if you think that success just grows on trees with coaches. Okay. And here's where I'll say I've been a little disappointed with Steve Cherundolo in terms of for a team that is as consistently good as LAFC is and consistently competing for trophies like they are, they've been one of the least enjoyable teams to watch for me over the last couple seasons.
Agreed.
And so that is an indictment on Steve, I think, a little bit as a coach, but also like he wins. So what's his legacy? Should be he's been one of the best coaches in the league for the last couple of years, no question about it. He won trophies. What else do you want as a fan base? What else do you want as an organization? Okay, you want it to look better? Fine. Maybe you want it to look like Columbus and Nancy? Well, good luck.
To be honest, I don't give a shit what it looks like as long as you win. And granted, like
some people do. And I've questioned him at times tactically in terms of some of these finals that they've played in. I've said, I don't really get it. I don't really see what Steve is trying to accomplish here. You know what I mean?
Let's back this train up and think about who Steve is and the systems that he developed in. He developed in a pragmatic Germany where the only thing that you care about is scoring goals, efficiency, and winning. That's it. And defending, right? And that's what his teams look like. He approaches the game. He approaches the game that way. And I have a lot of appreciation for that. It's not the most attractive. It's not Wilfred Nancy. It's not Columbus.
You can't argue with the success. And
because they win. If they were ugly and they weren't winning, okay, no harm, no foul. Like I get it. I would want to change too. But this guy takes pieces and he goes and puts his club in cup finals.
Yeah. You're not wrong, but I think there's a small conversation to be had. Is this a product of great coaching or is this a product of great talent? And I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. And I think Steve has done a good job managing that talent, but I think I lean more so towards it probably is more individual talent, in my opinion. But you're not wrong. This is not to disparage Cherundolo in any way, because you still have to manage the team in the roster and get there. You have to, okay? And he's done that.
There are plenty of coaches and clubs.
You're right, but his legacy needs to be one of, hey, we're going to look back on his time at LAFC and remember it as one of winning trophies. And maybe in the future, the LAFC fans don't realize how good they had it until it's gone.
I think that it's going to be the latter there, because I also think that he's done a very good job at managing big-time personalities, managing top-level talent, but also incorporating that mid-level MLS player and then moving them on. Think about how often Thornton has brought players into that mix, and Steve has plugged them in and then also shipped them out at the end of the season.
But I think you have to give a lot of credit to Thornton for that.
Of course.
For the roster management. I think Thornton consistently provides, in terms of MLS rosters, a top 5 roster every season.
Mm-hmm. He has. Now, you still got to drive the car, right? You can't lose sight of that. There are plenty of clubs in this league that have talent within their roster and don't get near the production that Steve got out of it.
I love what you said, because it is true. The German efficiency that I think Steve was brought up in, you see that in his teams. Mm-hmm. But again, it's not the most fun to watch, and it's not the most aesthetically pleasing to watch, and it always left me wanting a little bit more. I always wanted a little bit more when I watched his teams play, and I don't know if that's a ding on him, but what I do know is that he should be remembered for being a winner.
So, all right, let me ask you a question, because I'm interested to hear what your answer is here. If you, as a fan, right, I'm asking you, Dax, your boyhood club is going to play beautiful soccer, and you get to show up to the park and you get to say, yeah, that's my team. They just played like that. But you're not guaranteed a victory. Or you get to show up to the park and you're like, yeah, my team is going to give you a fucking nightmare every week, and we're probably going to win. Which one are you taking?
You know me, bro. I'm like I'm Joga Bonito, bro.
Yes.
I'm taking winning, of course.
Of course you are taking winning, because you're a competitor. I know that. And yeah, it's easy to say, like, yes, Wilfred is the greatest coach since sliced bread, but he's also winning, right? He's also winning. If he wasn't, you don't get those flowers. I don't know. I think the league is losing a great hire, a great coach in Steve Cherundolo going back to Germany. I would hope that he would come back, but doesn't really feel like that. It feels like this is, man, I'm more of a German than an American now. Not that he's not an American. I'm just saying, like, it seems like this is I'm gonna.
Can we have a little fun in this show? Because
our family's gonna grow in Germany.
Fun to end this show.
All right, what do you got?
Who is your dream manager to replace Steve Cherundolo? Massive market. Great team. Like, you can go get anyone you want in MLS or in the world. Who are you bringing in to replace Cherundolo?
Wow, that's a good question.
And by the way, Sasha Kleshton makes a great point when we were talking about this. He said, "Listen, the timing of it. Who knows why? We can speculate all we want about the timing of it, because I think it's a little bit weird, the timing of it. But at least now, if you're LAFC, you give yourself 8 months, an 8-month runway." To go and basically interview whatever candidate you want. It's
a big window to still have a great coach in place and not have any speculation out there other than, we get to decide. I love that. Well played for LAFC and Steve.
Hey, wait,
it's very mature out of both of them. I'm giving you my answer. I think the target still has to be Pep Guardiola, right? Like that's the guarantee. That's the number one that you have to go after. Because if this is a club of choice, you're heading into 2026. You bring in Pep into the LA market. A Galaxy,
is that realistic?
I don't know. It depends. Depends on how ambitious this league is.
How about a well-rested Jurgen Klopp?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Yes. Like, okay, sure.
Your answer just then. I'm like
1A, 1B. I just here's why that was my reaction to Jurgen Klopp. When he takes a step away and he's like, yeah, I'm kind of done with this chapter of my life as a coach.
He just said he's like, a break.
Yeah, but he wants to be like whatever the heck he's doing with Red Bull. I don't know. Maybe I just don't see it, which is why I can't. I don't jump on board with that one right away. The other kind of name that just immediately popped into my head that I felt like would fit well in LA with LAFC is Patrick Vieira.
I really like that shout.
To go and get him because he obviously has league experience. You know, he clearly is interested in coming back to the league. You put a personality like that's charismatic, that can lead basically anybody in the world, and that takes your level up, I think, a pretty significant degree.
All right. Now the only answer, and the one that I actually hope comes true.
Who you got?
There would be no one more beautiful to watch on the sidelines and to watch in post-game press conferences, getting asked questions from MLS reporters and getting interviewed on the sideline than by Andrew Wiebe.
I was going to say, you giving Andrew Wiebe the job? What are we doing here?
No. Interviewed by Andrew.
He's interviewing. Okay.
Then Jose Mourinho.
Oh, God.
Give me Jose, please.
Is that really what you want? Do you really want that?
I would love Mourinho in MLS. Love Mourinho in MLS. It would be poetry.
That would take me a couple days to wrap my head around.
He would be must watch. You can't argue with his success. He would be boring as hell to watch. You know how Thierry Henry and you actually played with all these guys, so you probably do know very intimately about how like they wouldn't play on turf and they like wouldn't travel for this game and all this other shit. Could you imagine what Mourinho's requests would be, or like his demands? Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm definitely not coaching in Kansas City. I'm not going to Houston if it's above 85 degrees. I'm not going here. Like that's why he would be box office, man. He would be box office.
I can't stand Mourinho. So
that's why he would be great, because a lot of people can't stand him.
Yeah. So then put him on an LAFC touchline. Sure. Go for it.
Why not?
Yeah. I actually like my answers better if they want to have success in the organization. But if you want to just be theater, which is LA.
They don't have a chance at Pep. At least these other guys, they might have a small chance at.
Well, you asked unrealistic asks or answers only. So.
What a great show.
That's pretty good.
Man crew without Alan Gordon. Maybe we'll make this a regular thing.
No, he'll be back to slow us down soon enough. I did want to ask you one question. We can end on this. 4 results that I thought really stuck out over the weekend. And I need it in 25 words or less. Which is the most significant result for you? Charlotte over San Diego at home. Cincy over Chicago, which I thought was a great game. The unbeatens. So Miami over Columbus, or Philly just abusing Atlanta.
I mean, they're all significant for different reasons.
They are.
I feel like we talk about Miami too much, but that was the most significant result because they beat, in my opinion, the best coach in the league. And that result was more about Columbus, I think, than it was about Miami. But I still look at Inter Miami and I look at them. They haven't lost a game this year, and they haven't looked particularly great the last couple of weeks. It's just if Columbus can't beat them with that, like with playing as well as Columbus did, it's like Inter Miami is just scary. You know what I mean? And shout out, I will say, I think the other answer to this question is Cincinnati, because Cincinnati hasn't even looked that great. They've had tons of injuries, similar to the LA Galaxy, and yet what does Pat Noonan do? All he does is win games.
4 wins in a row, right?
All he does is win games without his best players on the field. And
not unbeaten, 4 wins.
No, I know, but Cincinnati's top 2 in the East right now?
Yeah, they're in second.
They're second in the East. And they haven't had their best players, and they haven't even looked great. Cincinnati is absolutely in for a shout for the Supporter Shield this year. Evander is slowly starting to round into MVP form. Evander quietly has 6 goals this year. How? Like what?
Dude, if you get him maybe just a tick higher in terms of production, and they start to figure out that dynamic within that space. Yeah, I'm just saying just a little bit more rhythmic in terms of you can see that he's settled and comfortable in that role. Man, they could be very dangerous.
I still, as an analyst, I haven't had many good predictions in preseason. I still like him for MVP as my best prediction, which was pretty easy to call.
He could have a hot second half of the year.
He hasn't even been that good. He has 6 goals.
That's my point. That's my point.
One behind the Golden Boot leader in Baribo, and he's missed with injury. Like,
I'll finish it because let's throw the Charlotte over San Diego because that's probably the least significant of the other three. But I will say Philly putting 3 on Atlanta tells me a lot about both sides right now. Philly actually is real, which is, I think, a big deal because they got some horses and they're producing and they've turned over some pieces and Gazdag's out and they arguably look better. That's number one. Atlanta in some real trouble. Atlanta does not look good. And
Atlanta could be a whole other podcast for us, but
dude,
we'll save that for another day.
That's not a great space to be in for those guys.
Also, so Charlotte fans, don't jump down our throat without mentioning Pep Biel. He is the leader in the MVP race at this point in time right now. Leads the league in goal contributions for a team on top of the East.
Vander's got some work to do to catch him.
But you can't argue with what Pep Biel is doing right now.
No, you cannot. He's a player. He's a baller. That was a good signing. Well done, Charlotte, and big win for them. Dax, you were fantastic today. Gordo, also, you made less mistakes on this podcast than you ever have in the history of our podcast. Well done, Gordo. Journeymen, we'll see you out there.